Lawyers of Reddit, what is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? A friend of mine is a lawyer, and he said that a client once turned up to court in the actual same outfit he was wearing in the burglary. When the CCTV footage come up in evidence, the client looked down to himself and was like, "Oh shit. Your Honor, I'd like to plead back." Coincidence? Sounds like reasonable doubt to me. Defendant Chip, I'm sorry Your Honor. I didn't know that I couldn't do that. Judge, well now you do. Just get out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Case dismissed. Plead the fifth. Unfair dismissal case. The client claimed to have been dismissed without reason or following procedure. After we had started the case, it comes out that not only was he given 3 written warnings, but he was also called in for a disciplinary hearing before his dismissal. Don't lie to your lawyer. Similar to a doctor, I feel like not telling your lawyer everything can just hurt you. The only reason I can see anyone having a valid reason for lying to a doctor is if they have someone in the room, the patient, who they can't tell the truth to. For example, sex. If I was at the doctor's with my family present, any one of them, and a doctor asked me, I'd say no. Not because I want to lie, but because my family are extreme Christians and sex before marriage is the worst thing to them. Thankfully I can drive, and am extremely unlikely to ever be in this situation. Edit. Replies are 90%. Insurance blah blah. I'm not even from US, so this doesn't account for anything. And the doctor will ask them to step out. Yes, maybe a competent doctor, but many won't. I once got asked if I was sexually active in front of my mom. She was sitting behind me, so I shook my head, but whipped my eyes up and down. She just nodded and said I see, and checked the box. Lucky it was on the screen also facing away from my mom. Edit. It has come to my attention that some of you think I'm a girl. No, my mom is just really weird about this stuff. Not draconian or anything. Just makes you want to blip out of existence. I just tried shaking my head and nodding my eyes, and I think the interviewer would have thought I was crazy. Not a lawyer yet, but I clerked for a DA's office throughout law school. Obviously we don't have clients, but I'll never forget this kidnapping case I worked on. It involved 2 Asian male defendants who were both the same age and looked relatively similar. Witness is on the stand and is asked to identify where the defendant who pushed a newsie into his face is seated. It's clear the witness is having trouble differentiating the defendants. In a true moment of brilliance, one defendant raises his fucking hand and basically points to himself like, "Right here bud." Hands down the dumbest shit I'd ever seen. I thought his defense attorney was going to have a brain aneurysm. Who has 2 thumbs and shoved a submachine gun in your face. Points 1 thumb and 1 Uzi itself. Bob Kelso. How ya doing? He was probably also part of the Cobras in high school. I'm still a law student, and this happened during my first internship at a court. A girl among other people was charged with drug possession, but because she had thrown away the drugs and the police couldn't prove that she bought or owned the drugs, BC it could have been one of the other people as well who still had drugs on them. The judge ruled in dubio pro reo. He then asked if she wants to say add something, and this girl asked if she can get her drugs back. The defense attorney looked like he was about to get a heart attack. Edit. For those wondering, I know what in dubio pro reo means, but I wasn't sure if they use the term in other countries, and tried to explain it if not. This happened in Germany. I really don't want to believe anyone is that stupid. Sadly yes. I've heard of people calling the police for getting ripped off in their meth purchase. Retired cop, I've worked those calls. They do happen, and it's not a one-off thing. When someone is extremely angry, knows exactly who ripped them off, but are real dodgy about what they sold the person / tried to buy, it's real clear. Others just flat out tell you, man, I know I shouldn't have been buying crack, but he ripped me off. What exactly do you do in that situation? Do you have to arrest the person, or do you just tell them they are shit out of luck? Genuinely curious. It was a typical appointment/interview with the immigration committee in order to grant my client a residence permit. He was marrying a woman in my country with my country's nationality, and this is a legitimate reason to be granted a residence permit. So it was a typical procedure. At least that's what I thought. The committee is bored to death and we all want to be over with it, so they asked him all typical and boring questions, like how did they meet, where they live, etc. They ask these things to identify white/false marriages. At some point they ask him if he was married before, and he says yes, back in my home country, and I'm still married actually, never got a divorce, WTF. I was stunned. Double marriage is forbidden in my country. And he never bothered to mention this detail to me, neither to the other lawyer, when we asked him. He later told me he said the truth because he was afraid to lie in front of a committee. An honest and stupid man. I got all my money though, yet we had to find another way to gain a residence permit. I felt a too real shudder of recognition reading your story. So many times I've asked a client the exact same question like 5 different ways, just to make sure their answer remains consistent, just to have them answer in the exact opposite way before the judge or decision maker during the hearing. Like, fuck, why even retain me if you're not even going to stick to the plan you're paying me money for? One of the unsolved mysteries of life, eternally. I'm actually a lawyer, but I was only watching this trial, not participating. So the case was that woman A had hit woman B in the head with a heavy beer pint at a bar, and woman B got pretty serious injuries. The defense claimed that woman A had not hit anyone with the pint, but instead had just thrown the pint into a random direction, and it happened to hit B in the head. Thus it was an accident, and not a battery. Well, the prosecution had a CCTV tape from the bar, and it was shown at the trial. And the tape clearly showed in HD as A walked behind B and smashed the pint to her head so hard that the pint shattered on impact. I looked at the defense lawyer and his jaw literally almost hit the table. The prosecutor also noticed this and asked something along thrown A. And the defense lawyer said that due to technical difficulties he couldn't get the CCTV tape open on his computer when he was reviewing the evidence. Woman A was found guilty. So yeah, I was completely dumbfounded. I can't get the file to play. What is it? Video of the incident. Oh. It'll show you didn't do it, right? Yeah. Great. Next file please. Man. This lawyer giggizes. Client in family law matter lied to me about using meth. Then used meth with a child in the room, and the ex got footage of it on the nanny cam, and then made excuses about why they couldn't do a drug test, then blamed me when they lost custody, despite the fact that they didn't show up to appointments or return my calls, so I couldn't prepare any court material. I dumped the client after that and left family law. What kind of law do you do now? I do civil law with a focus on human rights now. When I did family law it practically sucked my soul from me. Safe to say I'm a much happier person now that I'm not dealing with people about harming their children and using them as pawns. That's something I've seen repeated again and again from lawyers on Reddit. Criminal law exposes you to some nasty people, but family law exposes you to just insanity and emotional abuse on a whole other level. I was a paralegal for family law. I hated it. Divorcing adults can act like immature brats. A defendant was written a cell phone ticket while driving and defended himself. Your Honor, I was not using a smartphone while driving. I was actually using a flip phone. Guilty. So as a technicality, if it's stated on the ticket that he was using a smartphone, and he was able to prove he didn't own a smartphone without saying he was using one at the time, would that get him off? Edit. My intention with this would be hoping the defendant wouldn't be dumb enough to then say it is this instead, but rather just say no, I do not own a smartphone, so I could not have been operating one while driving. A truthful and whole statement under oath. I'd assume any good lawyer would then press for further details and have it collapse But I'm also spending my evening on Reddit, so what do I know? Likely not. People like to think that typos or glitches on a ticket mean they get off, but the justice system doesn't work that way. The court is asking, the law says, don't do X, did you do X? The fact that the ticket might say something incorrect could make it harder to prove you did X, but it's not that hard to say oops in a hurry after the stop, I wrote that detail down wrong, but I can still swear under oath they definitely did X. I know you probably meant oath, but I really like swear under oath. It's like what someone would say if they were being sworn into Starfleet. I'm a public defender in an area with lots of meth use. Meth makes most people talk a lot. So I can't tell you how many clients forget to mention that they got to the jail still high and called their mom/girlfriend/buddy on the recorded jail phone, and not only confessed to the crime, but also brainstormed whatever alibi or version of events I'm relying on to defend them. Edit. I'm seeing this question a lot, so I'll add some info here. This is not legal advice. Just explaining things a bit more. Calls to a lawyer are privileged and generally go through dedicated lines that aren't recorded, depending on the facility. Calls to family, friends, etc. through the normal phones are not privileged, are generally recorded, and can be used in court. There are usually printed signs near the phones and a recorded warning before each call that this is the case. I was in court once for a school journalism project, and there was a woman in court who had been arrested for weed and crack possession when she came to bail out her boyfriend from a separate arrest. Apparently he called her from jail and told her to come bail her out and to bring some weed and crack. The guard overheard him, and it was recorded on the jail phone, so they arrested her when she showed up. I want to think these people are just addled by drugs, but somehow that feels like wishful thinking. Employment law matter. He claimed to have been unfairly dismissed over bogus performance management. The real reason, he organized via Craigslist to have someone collect a box of his cum from a children's playground. There were explicit messages from him asking what they did with it and whether they rubbed it all over themselves. The employer provided us the messages. Edit. He was doing this on company time. Jesus, if you're going to be a creep, don't do it on company time/equipment. WTF is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? Broadly gestures at cum box. FDA dismissed a guy for insider trading. He would access a database of drugs about to be approved, which nearly always caused stock to go up. He'd made millions buying stock in his family's name to cover his tracks. But he made a fatal mistake. He looked at the database and then bought stock with his work computer, which FDA owned, and could search without consent. You click a statement to that effect each time you sign on. If he'd waited and done it on his own computer, they'd have had to get a search warrant, a much tougher proposition. Cases are paralegal. Negligence case. Client argued that a lack of street lights and a cyclist he couldn't see was responsible for him hitting a wire pole. Upon discovery, the first respondent's report indicated that they found the driver in the driver's seat, pants down, with porn playing on the phone. Wasn't difficult to figure out who was negligent at that point. Your Honor, if the cable repairman had simply fixed the cable in accordance with professional standard practices, my client would have had no other recourse but to keep his ostrich in the corral on the evening in question. Not a lawyer, law student, and not exactly what you asked for, but I feel like it fits here anyways. We read about a criminal case in which there wasn't enough evidence to convict the suspect, so the suspect was not guilty due to reasonable doubt, and he responded, "Thank you, judge, I'll never do it again." DA went into appeal and Jude got convicted. What case? If he was acquitted, once the verdict was reached, why wouldn't he be immune from double jeopardy? Because it wasn't a second case but an appeal.